Now will we see the magic?
All right, where's Murray? Okay, who is it?
This is Jesus, kid.
Know then that it is the year 10,191.
Yes, we are bored. We're all bored now.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
Hello, and welcome to Mary vs. the Movies with your host, Mary Jones.
And Dennis Ling.
So, this week, we are watching An American Werewolf in London. Werewolves
Werewolves.
in London. I wonder how his hair is.
Perfect, I bet.
I mean, obviously, my biggest question is, does this movie use the song Werewolves of London? It seems like an obvious, and like, John Landis certainly could have gotten the funding.
The second best werewolf song, by the way.
What is the first best?
Werewolves of Manayunk.
You know, you are borderline Philly Boy Rye in saying that. You know that, right?
I believe he played that, like...
Oh, no, I've
live,
heard it.
yeah.
No. I've heard live versions of Warren Zevon playing in Philadelphia saying Werewolves of Manayunk.
Yeah.
And just the fact that he even bothered to find out that there was a Manayunk in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
How can you not love that?
Probably hooked up with Stella,
Oh, my God.
the man-eater from Manayunk.
Yes. Stella, for those of you who are not from our area or grew up in the, I guess, 80s.
Yeah, 80s.
Like, I didn't know if she went back to the 70s, but yeah,
No,
80s.
she was actually not on that long. Like, maybe, I don't know.
I was right in the sweet spot
Yeah.
by being, I don't know, 9 and stealing the portable television up to my bedroom.
Right. There was, like, another guy before her, like an older guy, but I don't remember
Kind
him.
of a Sven Gully type.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stella, for those who don't know, after Saturday Night Live would be over, on would come Saturday Night Dead on channel 3.
NBC.
That's right. Because in those days it was NBC. So as soon as Saturday Night Live was over, it would be Saturday Night Dead, and it was Stella, the man-eater from Manayunk, who would show like horror movies and stuff.
Around the same time as Elvira, but
Yes.
Elvira was bigger. So.
Elvira, of course, became a star, and Stella was a very local sort of thing. Kind of like Captain Noah or Chief Halftown or, what was her name, Sally Starr and all that stuff. Philadelphia television! I'm sure you care. But anyway, we are watching An American Werewolf in London, a film I don't really know much about except for the transformation scene, because I think at the time it was considered, oh my God, this is amazing. And honestly, compared to what the old werewolf transformations looked like, it is pretty cool. So I don't know much about this movie at all. I know Griffin Dunne is in it. And I know Griffin Dunne from After Hours, which is a great movie that Dennis still hasn't seen, even though it's on Criterion right now, and I want him to watch it. I know that it's directed by John Landis. In the period of Landis's career that I like his movies, so this
right
is
around Thriller.
No, this is before. Well, what year was Thriller? 83.
83. Yeah.
So this is, I think, 81. So this is after the Blues Brothers, of course. And before Trading Places. And so that's the thing. Like, I like a lot of John Landis is I won't call him a fave. So he's not a problematic fave. He's just problematic because although he had made several films that I think are really enjoyable and I like very much, The Blues Brothers, Coming to America, Trading Places, Three Amigos. I liked Three Amigos. I sounded kind of down on it during the podcast, but, looking back on it, I'm like, no, there's a lot to enjoy in there. But the man is not a good dude. He faced no consequences for killing several actors when that was pure negligence. So he's a problem. But this is before that. So much like I can enjoy Chinatown and Rosemary's Baby, I'm going to enjoy this movie, right? Yes. I don't really know much about it except that it's because it's John Landis, I assume it has elements of comedy, but knowing that it has full-on werewolf transformations, I assume it has elements of body horror. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, I have not watched a whole lot of werewolf movies. Like, I never saw the Jack Nicholson movie Wolf, and I didn't see the Benicio del Toro werewolf movie.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Oh, it's sometime within the last 20 years because, everything after I don't know 2001 has kind of smashed together in my brain. So don't ask me exactly what year that was, and I don't know if it was part of the new Universal attempt at a monster universe.
Bleh.
Yeah. Ugh. All right. So I don't really know anything about this movie.
I haven't seen it. I don't know anything either.
I'm kind of vamping a little bit. I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. I've always heard good things about this one. Like, I hear that the sequel is terrible. I hear this one's good.
The sequel,
American Werewolf in Paris.
yeah.
At which point it just feels like, well, what next? Are we going to do like an American Werewolf goes to Oktoberfest? So, shall we get our wolf on?
Let's do it.
Well, I saw Lon Chaney walking with the Queen, doing the werewolves of London. I saw Lon Chaney Jr. walking with the Queen, doing the werewolves of London. I saw a werewolf drinking a pina colada at Trader Vic's. His hair was perfect.
Well, that was the most violent episode of All Creatures Great and Small that I have ever seen.
Oh, if only.
The reason I say that is the film does open on what is supposed to be the Yorkshire Moors. I think it was actually filmed in Wales. Boy, did I like this movie.
Yeah.
You know what? There have been several films that we've watched that I've really enjoyed. And some that I've been like, yeah, I'll watch that again. Moonstruck, obviously.
Yeah.
This is definitely on the, oh my God, I will watch this again list.
Yeah, it's great.
This movie was awesome. It's interesting to read up on the movie. Like, after we watched it, of course, you open up IMDb and you open up Wikipedia and you open up all these things. And it was interesting to read how audiences at the time were not ready for the mixture of horror and comedy, and how really kind of gruesome certain parts of this film are.
That also happened with Monty Python and the Holy Grail, though, too.
Well, that's true.
Like, people were not ready for limbs off and blood
everywhere. Like, I don't want to say that people in the 70s were soft, but...
Well, this was almost during... just after Vietnam, so...
True. Yeah, but... and I don't want to go too far off into a tangent about this, but I do wonder to what extent things like Vietnam made it easier for, I don't want to say easier, but like the people who didn't go there then got into gore. And I wonder what the relationship there is. It really is after Vietnam that you see films like this, American Werewolf in London, like Dawn of the Dead, like Evil Dead, films that
Texas Chainsaw
Massacre. These are all films that are made after we lost Vietnam, and a lot of guys came back, damaged, just physically damaged. I mean, the same thing happened in other wars, but I think between the loosening of the Hays Code in the 60s and the breakdown of the Hollywood system allowed films to really explore not just gore, but to use humor in dealing with our fears. Every horror film isn't just horror, right? Or if it is about horror, it's about something very specific that we're afraid of, right? There is an undercurrent to this film that is sort of, touching on ideas about anti-Semitism.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really interesting. And I mean, it's not like the film doesn't tip its hat to this. That they bring up more than once that our lead David is supposed to be Jewish. He has the nightmare about pig men dressed as Nazis coming to kill him. I mean, this is definitely something that's in lurking underneath in the film. I mean, I haven't read any good essays kind of exploring it, but I think there's definitely something there.
Yeah, and someone checked him out.
Well, no, but that's the thing. Like, there is a scene with the nurses, because he's in the hospital for 3 weeks, and they check out, is he circumcised or not? And they make a joke about that because, of course, that's not common in Europe, whereas it is common over here. And they even make that comment. So the film opens on what's supposed to be the Yorkshire Moors, I think. And again, this is a movie that really, for my taste, beautifully marries the English Gothic with American slapstick, so that we open in this situation where we have these two American travelers.
I love that obviously they're hitchhiking and they're in the back of a sheep truck, so they're like stuffed in with all these sheep.
Oh yeah, it's not. I mean, it's nicely done.
Yeah.
So that exactly. They hitched a ride with a sheep farmer. A shepherd, if you will.
Yeah. Sheeper.
And again, as I said, it kind of opens up like an episode of All Creatures Great and Small, so that these guys are hitching a ride, with this farmer, and get off at a town out in the middle of nowhere in the moors. I believe it's supposed to be, I feel like I saw a calendar somewhere that it's supposed to be like October or November or something like that. They don't really say what time of year it is, but it looks cold.
Yeah.
It looks very cold. Our two heroes, not heroes, what do you call them? Victims? Whatever. Yeah. Jack and David. And David is our titular werewolf, as we find out, in about 10 minutes.
Jack is his very horny friend.
Extremely. Played by Griffin Dunn. Anyway, so these guys wander into town after getting off the truck, and they make their way to the local pub, which is called the Slaughtered Lamb, which has a really gruesome sign out front, and it's a picture of a wolf howling, and
his head.
Well, the wolf's head, yes.
Yeah.
That's actually a good point. It's not like just a nice wolf, like in profile or anything. It's like this very bloody looking wolf's head, just Yeah,
it's you get the feeling it's like, by the way, werewolves, we're on to you here.
Yeah.
We're all in here playing darts, playing chess.
They have a pentangle
Yeah.
drawn on the one wall. And I believe there's garlic even hanging.
Yeah.
Which is funny because we just watched Horror of Dracula, the Hammer horror movie from '58, the first of the Dracula movies, where it's a very similar scene, actually, where, they go into like an inn or something, and there's garlic hanging from the walls. And it's the same sort of thing here. So the people who own the pub have drawn a pentangle, which is a pentagram, but without the circle around it. So it's a 5-point star, and they have it drawn on the wall of the pub. And this goes back to at least the Wolfman, the Universal horror movie, where the pentacle is the symbol of the Wolfman.
And the thing is, they keep bringing this up throughout the movie. Like they're constantly. They're not even like just like referencing it like visually. Like they'll just say it.
They'll talk about the movie The Wolfman.
And there's that scene, where Claude Rains and
Yeah, which is great.
But it still feels kind of subtle. Like it's talking about it while it's happening, but like it doesn't feel like it's hitting you over head over it.
By the way, one thing I really liked when they walk into this pub, and of course, it's just they're in the middle of nowhere, and they walk in, and it's just these local guys hanging out, and the barkeep is a woman, and everybody looks at them like, who are you? What are you doing here? Oh God, it's Americans. Which reminded me a lot of our own honeymoon in Wales. And it was about the same time of year too.
Yeah.
And anyway, I'm not entirely convinced that you were not at some point bitten by a wolf.
I don't know why you'd say that.
Oh, I don't know at all. Anyway, yeah, they're told to keep off the moors and don't go off wandering into the countryside, which is like classic Gothic horror sort of.
Beware the
warnings.
moon.
Exactly. So what do? They're kind of creeped out. They leave the place, and of course they go off, get lost, wander onto the moors, and get attacked by a wolf.
Yeah.
And Jack is just eviscerated. And
David takes off as soon as he takes off, runs the other way, and then he's like, "Oh, I should help him, I guess."
Yeah.
This is like a very long time of running, and then he turns around.
Yeah.
And Jack is not well.
No. He's mostly barbecue at this point, just shredded everywhere. At which point the wolf then attacks David, and at this point the villagers have gathered up their guns and shot the werewolf. And the next thing you see is David on the ground and a naked man next to him, which of course is the werewolf changed back. Jack is dead. David is sent off to a hospital in London, and we meet up with him again like 3 weeks later when he finally comes out of his coma. He's been cared for by the National Health Service. Gee, I kind of wish we had something like that here, because let me tell you, if he was an American, oh my God, can you imagine what kind of bill he's going to get at the end of 3 weeks in the hospital?
Yeesh.
I know, right? I don't, like, you spent, what, 4 days in the hospital? And I don't even want to think about how much we paid. And we have insurance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like beyond what we paid, like how much they would charge.
I know,
Jeez.
right? So this guy's in for 3 weeks. And I'm sorry, being mauled by a werewolf is not a pre-existing condition. So anyway, he wakes up and he gets friendly with a nurse. Oh gosh, what is her name?
Alex.
He gets friendly with Nurse Alex, who is played by Jenny Agutter. Oh my God, Jenny Agutter, of course, turns out to be the chief nun on Call the Midwife. So, like, I'm watching this whole movie, and I'm like, yeah, this nurse, she's really familiar. I don't know why she's familiar. I look up on IMDb. Oh, she's in a bunch of different things. Oh, she was in The Avengers. I don't remember that. And then Dennis is like, oh, she's on Call the Midwife. And I'm like, oh, my God, I saw a nun naked. That's great. Anyway. Yeah, so David and Alex, the nurse, they fall in love. We'll call it that. As he's like kind of coming back into, consciousness and reality, he starts having visions of Jack, his friend, who is a slowly decomposing corpse who keeps talking to him.
The effects are amazing. Like,
oh my God, they look great. Yeah. The effects, by the way, it was all designed by Rick Baker, who is like a famous FX makeup guy in Hollywood. It looks great. So, you have like Jack through the film as he keeps appearing to David, he's like decomposing. And like the first time we see him, he just looks mauled. And then as time goes by, like he starts to turn green. He's just like physically decomposing, so that towards the end of the film, they basically just have to use a puppet because like his body is just completely falling apart. It's gross in a really, really cool way.
But his character doesn't really change at all. Like he's just...
No, actually what's kind of fun is, so like when Jack is alive and they're wandering around on the moors, it's fun because they have very naturalistic sort of like relationship and way of talking to each other. It's, they have a lot of kind of give and take. The idea is like these guys, they're probably like just out of college and they're backpacking around Europe, right?
Yeah.
So they're young and they're talking about like, well, after this we're going to Italy and, hopefully we'll get laid and blah, blah, blah. And they have like kind of a nice rapport. And then, once he dies, he's not like sullen or anything. He's just like, yeah, I'm dead. This kind of sucks. And I don't like being part of the undead. So, his whole thing is he keeps appearing to Jack and saying, look, I hate to tell you this, but you're going to have to kill yourself. Which is a terrible thing to hear, right? Yeah. But it makes sense. As long as the werewolf lives, his victims become the undead. The only way to let the souls rest is to kill the werewolf that, mauled them and killed them.
And the bloodline, he says.
And the bloodline. Well, David's not going to have a bloodline. As he is recovering, he keeps having these visions of Jack. He tells him, look, if you don't kill yourself, you're going to become a werewolf and you're going to start attacking people, and that is extremely bad. And I think David's reaction is how all of us would react, is like, hold on, I'm sure we can figure out a way out of this.
You're a bit of bad beef.
Yeah, you're an undercooked potato or something. Yeah. There's more gravy than grave in you.
Yeah.
I wish I had thought of that, but it is sort of a Jacob Marley situation.
Yeah.
So he falls in love with the nurse, and when he's discharged from the hospital, she's just like, well, why don't you come back to my place?
Before this happens, like, there's also this doctor that's taking care of him.
Oh, well, that's true. Actually, the doctor's very important. And the doctor, he is a main character in the film. But so there is a doctor, this older guy who is like watching after him. And what I like about the film is he's not skeptical about what is going on.
Because the whole time David keeps saying, I think I'm a werewolf. This isn't good, right?
Right, exactly. And
he's not really hiding anything at all. Like, and the movie doesn't really hide anything. It just kind of tells you everything. At first, it starts off, well, this is just weird country folks superstition. But the doctor goes and tries to figure out, okay, so what actually happened to my patient? And he just full on believes that, yep, this guy was turned into a werewolf, and this is a huge problem. Mostly because the attack on him and Jack was like pretty much covered up by the town.
Right, exactly.
So
he
he's
goes
just
off
supposed
to
know why.
right. He goes off to the town to figure out what happened, and it's very much a Van Helsing situation where he completely accepts the reality of sure, this guy got turned into a werewolf. Instead of spending half an hour just trying to set up, well, could this possibly happen? And all these fake outs and stuff like, no. Let's just make this is the reality. Oh, I forgot to say. So when he's in the hospital, this is kind of fun. The doctor brings in somebody from the American embassy because, this is an American who's been attacked and all these things happen. He brings in a guy from the embassy, and the guy, of course, turns out to be Frank Oz. Which is fun. It's like he shows up and it's Frank Oz and he sounds like Bert.
And then 10 minutes later, we see Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog.
A couple minutes later, we are in what turns out to be a dream sequence where he's back home with his family. He's watching television. He's watching The Muppet Show. And this is when he has the vision of the Nazi pigmen coming to kill him. Yeah. So this is like one of his nightmares that he's having. But it is funny that they're using actually footage from The Muppet Show.
Well, let's get to the transformation. The thing that everyone remembers about it.
So this transformation is fantastic.
Yeah.
It still looks good, man. We're not doing like just a simple wipe to, oh my gosh, now he's a wolf, or like, oh, it happened in the bushes or something. You're seeing this man physically transform in a way that is real body horror. Yeah. His face is changing, his hands are changing, the hair is like growing through his back. It's really cool what they do. I think they got an Academy Award or a nomination for this. I think
Academy Award.
Yeah, because it's amazing special effects. It's amazing makeup. This is all, as far as I'm aware, practical effects that must have taken forever to do.
So it won the first ever Academy Award for Best Makeup.
So yeah, he transforms into a wolf and he goes on a rampage through London. He kills several people, including, let's see, a couple yuppies going off to a dinner party.
Yeah.
And a guy standing on a platform on the underground.
Bib Fortuna.
It's Bib Fortuna.
Yeah.
Who, I'm going to tell you something right now. I don't remember exactly who Bib Fortuna is. I know you're looking at me like I just said I don't know who the president is.
Jabawonga.
What does that mean?
He was like Jabba's second in command.
Okay, is he the guy who
with
like
the big long
ears? Yeah, all right. So here's the thing. The only reason I remember the only reason I remember the name Bib Fortuna is because I just picture a guy bobbing for a tuna fish like as if it was bobbing for apples.
Well, there you go.
And he wakes up in the London Zoo. It's very much like the movie Cat People, the Val Lewton. Yeah, it's kind of a horror movie.
Yeah.
From the 40s.
There's a couple callbacks to that because there's also when the wolf screams or something or yells.
Yeah.
I think it switches to a train.
Oh yes.
And there's a famous like cat thing like that where the cat roars and it switches to a bus, which is like the first time that was ever used in film.
Right. So he wakes up naked in the zoo and he's like in the wolf den. He's naked. He encounters a woman covered in furs.
Yeah.
And it's just like kind of a fun visual sort of thing there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fun stuff with him being naked and like stealing a kid's balloons and,
stealing a woman's jacket.
Yeah. He goes back to the apartment and Alex tells him, I think because she's been confronted by the doctor. The doctor said all these people were killed. I think I know what's going on. So essentially her and the doctor are working together to try to figure out what to do about the fact that he's turning into a werewolf. She confronts him and says, I think this is what you've done. He's like, well, obviously I need to be arrested.
Right.
And so he goes off to Piccadilly Circus to get arrested. And nobody will arrest. He tries to insult the cop. He insults,
Shakespeare,
the royal family. He does everything he can. And everybody's response is like, well, you just seem like you're having a bad day. What's wrong with you? And he's like, why won't you arrest me? And they're like, well, I don't know. You sure you don't want to just go home?
So that's Trafalgar Square. He gets away from her.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's Trafalgar Square he gets arrested. He tries to get arrested in, and he runs away.
And she's trying to get him back to the doctor who knows who he is. He gets away from her, and he calls his family.
Yeah. Oh, this is actually kind of sad.
Yeah.
Because he gets his sister on the phone and says...
10-year-old sister.
His 10-year-old sister on the phone and essentially is saying, I have to kill myself. And he is understandably reluctant to do that.
He sees Jack there.
Right. He sees an image of Jack, his decomposing friend, outside of this porno theater in Piccadilly Circus. And so he follows him into the porno theater where they are watching See You Next Wednesday, which is some sort of John Landis trademark phrase that he's used more than once, but this is the time where we actually get to see the movie that he's referring to. It's a fake porno that they shot specifically for this movie. And, we actually do see it as a porno because I don't know. It's just, this is like kind of something left over from the 70s, if you ask me. But yeah, so they go into this porno theater where Jack confronts him. And it's not just Jack now. It's now all the other people that he killed the night before. Yeah, so
there's like 7 of them. There's like 3 homeless guys that he killed.
Right, yeah. There's the yuppies. There's the
Bib
guy.
Bib
Fortuna. There's Jack. And they're all in agreement. You have to kill yourself. And they get really kind of... What's fun about... Of course, this part is all played for comedy, where it's like they're all very cheery about all the ways that he could kill himself. You could get a gun. You could poison yourself. You could hang yourself. You kind of have to kill yourself. Otherwise, we can never have eternal peace.
Like the movie just bounces back and forth between comedy and horror, like really fast. Like they're all like bloody and stuff. Like they're all ripped up and. Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, you're like, they kind of have a point, Yeah. And he just can't bring himself to do it. At one point, he has a pocket knife. And he's going to slit his wrists, and he just can't bring himself to do it because that's kind of the natural response to be like, well, now, wait a minute. There's got to be a way we can figure a way out of this, right? Yeah. I can reason my way out of this. And, of course, the idea is that, like, you can't. Unfortunately for him, because, a full moon lasts, like, 3 nights. So that was the first night. Now we're into like the second night. He's going to turn into a wolf again. And that's exactly what happens as he's in the movie theater. And the thing is, so he's in a porno film and he's going like just groaning and stuff. So
nobody notices.
Nobody notices at first because they assume that someone's just getting really excited.
Exactly. He transforms and he starts mauling people in the porno theater.
He kills the owner of the theater.
Right.
And then the woman screams. I guess she saw what was happening.
Oh, the ticket taker?
Yeah.
Okay.
She screams. The cops come and they close the door.
Right.
Or the cop goes in, sees him eating.
Yeah, him
and runs out and closes the door. And then he's slamming against the door. And more cops come and they're all holding the door closed.
He bursts through the metal gate that's been pulled down and just starts a rampage. And now you've got this incredible sequence of just car crashes and people being mauled.
So there's this one police inspector.
And again, this is all in Piccadilly Circus, which if you've ever seen, it's like in the center of London, and it's basically like London's version of Times Square. Because it's got like, big electronic billboards and it's like a public meeting place and there's like cars everywhere.
So there's this one police inspector and he's been kind of doubtful of the story the entire time. And of course he gets his head ripped off.
Oh, yeah, that's right. There are these 2 detectives who are supposed to be like figuring out what's going on, and they are useless throughout the film. And yeah, the older
the young guy seems sympathetic, but he's dumb.
Yeah.
Like he's always doing something stupid.
There are cars piled up, and there are like headless bodies, and there's
people
maulings.
Flying through windows. And...
It's a really good scene. It does have kind of like, it does remind you of like some of the scenes from the Blues Brothers that were this destructive.
Oh yeah,
it's definitely got that same sort of feel. Only that here it's like bloodier.
But a lot of the violence is more from the panic than from the wolf.
He is cornered in an alleyway, and Alex fights her way through like the crowds and stuff to go and try to. Well, I don't think she knows exactly what to do. Yeah. And what would you do? But she just wants to, I guess, try to talk to him or see him or something, before they kill him, because they're going to kill him. And she sees he's a wolf. And she thinks she's going to tame him, I think. And she says, I love you and all this other stuff. And he just looks like, well, I'm a werewolf. I'm going to eat you.
There's a little pause, and then it seems like maybe he understands, but then
it's really ambiguous though, whether he understands or whether he is just pausing before he's going to rip her throat out.
Right.
And I kind of feel like he is so unable. He has no conscious self right now.
Now he has like this theory earlier on where he says like maybe a werewolf has to be killed by someone who loves them.
Right.
And he's talking about one of the movies where, like, I guess the father of the werewolf kills.
The original Wolfman movie. Yeah. Where Claude Rains has to kill Lon Chaney Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And so because she kind of pauses him, the cops have a chance to kill him.
Yep.
And so that's essentially what happens. They shoot him, and the next thing we do is we see, David as in his human form, naked, laying in the alley, and that's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
It just stops. I mean, it just ends. And man, I kind of respect that. That's it. That's the end of the movie. I realize my sitting here and describing this movie to you may not sound like the most compelling thing. Go and watch it. It looks great. Yeah. It's a visually good movie.
The music is great.
The dialogue is fun.
It doesn't seem dated at all.
That's what's weird about it.
Yeah.
Like, I think partially it's just, they filmed it as a film. It's interesting because you can feel its influence going forward. Again, this is one of like a handful of films from the early 80s that I think kind of changed the way that we relate to horror, in that they were able to make it funny. It's not like nobody had ever done something like that before. Like, all of Hitchcock's movies have elements of humor in them. Even the most tense ones, there are times where they break the tension, but this is one that actually uses comedy.
And it's partly because John Landis knows comedy. I mean, he did the Blues Brothers, and he did
Animal House.
Yeah, did Kentucky Fried Movie.
Right.
So
yeah, he came out of comedy, but
I feel like it solves something for horror where sometimes you need a release or something.
Yeah.
And so like you're constantly like, the way this movie works is that you're constantly laughing, and then terror, like it slowly builds back up to terror, and then it goes back to humor, and then goes back. It balances it so well.
So this is definitely an influential movie. I mean, obviously you can look at all of the Edgar Wright films afterwards.
I think Peter Jackson's early stuff.
Words right out of my mouth. I mean,
Yeah.
I was going to say Peter Jackson definitely.
Sam Raimi.
Yes. Well, Sam Raimi, I think he was already starting to make stuff, but there's no way that this didn't have an influence on Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, just in the way that,
Yeah, we haven't seen Evil Dead 1.
But that's more of a straight up horror, whereas Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, those are comedies. I mean, obviously George Romero was already starting to do that with Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah. I feel like there's not a lot of films that walk the line this way this one does. Because Shaun of the Dead is a comedy.
Yeah.
Definitely a comedy. Though it'll be just as violent, but it doesn't really linger on the horror as much.
No, this is definitely a horror movie that is funny.
I feel like because it takes it a little more seriously or something. Like it's not doing this as a joke or something. Like
no. I think you're right. It does take seriously the fact that he's been turned into a monster and doesn't want to be a monster. It's actually, you do feel kind of bad at the end.
Yeah.
You can't watch this movie and not feel sad for David because he didn't do anything wrong.
Like a lot of monster movies where it's like a guy that it's beyond his control. Like that's, a lot of that is like drugs. Like we were watching that horror of Dracula where Van Helsing says like, like it's like opium addiction. You can't help it. So
yeah. One thing that kind of jumped out to me as I was watching this. So this came out in 1981. The first time I went to the UK was in 1999. I am closer, like that was closer in time to when that film was made than I am to that time that I went to the UK for the first time. Okay. So there's 18 years between the film coming out and me going over there. And now there's 22 years between me going over there and now.
I'm sorry, babe.
I know. I'm dying. It hurts to think about. But one thing that as I'm watching this, I was just like, and honest to God, the last time I was over in the UK, payphones were still ubiquitous, and I'm sure they're not anymore. The red phone booths and stuff. As I was watching this, I was just thinking like, what would be different now? And not, honestly, you wouldn't change a whole lot. It's just that cell phones are everywhere, and I'm sure CCTV cameras are everywhere now, which is a whole other thing.
I wonder if ASBOs are still a thing.
The internet was not a thing. I mean, when I went over in 99, the internet was... I had to go to an internet cafe and pay, I forget how many pounds to access my email because there wasn't a computer lab at the college I was at. I was doing a summer program. And so I wanted to check my email because, I was over there for, however many weeks, and I wanted to just check up on things. And so I wasn't getting like normal news or anything, unless I put on a radio or the TV. And then, I'm just saying it was a different world, but it was a world that was closer to the world of this movie than the world that we live in now. And I'm old.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to be old.
I don't understand.
So anyway, this movie was awesome. I loved it. I love, as I said, it has a lot of elements of like gothic English horror. As I was watching, we had just watched, a Hammer horror movie. One of my favorite movies actually is Wallace and Gromit and the Curse of the Were-Rabbit, which also borrows from this movie. His transformation into the were-rabbit is directly lifted from this movie. But that's also a movie that knows how to use the English Gothic kind of, I don't know, what would you call it? Milieu? No, that's not the right word. Stuff. We'll call it stuff.
Stuff sounds good.
Yeah. And I don't know. Like for me, this movie was kind of like a perfect marriage of things that I like. So it's like the gothic horror with wisecracking Americans, and it had some sex.
Yeah,
it had some pretty good sex, to be honest.
Yeah, actually, this is like the fourth film. I think this is the fourth sex scene that has popped up. Like,
oh, I wasn't thinking about that, but all right.
So there's one in Moonstruck.
Yeah, sort of. I guess. So
we talked about the apple.
The apple. Definitely, yeah.
I feel like there's another, like just in Nightmare on Elm Street, there is one.
There is one, and
maybe there's one in Shag. I mean, I can't remember.
Yeah, Shag is a while ago now, and like Witches of Eastwick, it's alluded to, but I don't think we ever see any actual sex happening.
Yeah.
So.
Oh well.
There was, yeah. I'm not crying. Witches of Eastwick was a lot of fun, but I don't need to see Jack Nicholson. Anyway. So that was An American Werewolf in London, directed by John Landis. You can follow us on social media. We are Mary VS Movies on Twitter. We are maryvsmovies@gmail.com for any questions, complaints, suggestions, or questions. That's right. I mixed it up. Next week, I think we're going to watch Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
Yay.
Which is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's going to be a good movie, but I think it's going to be a fun movie. All right. Well, then, in that case, until next week.
I didn't mean to call you Meatloaf, Jack.
That's not what I was expecting, but all right.
He says that while transforming.